Hey guys, I'm going to show you this absolutely ridiculous endgame that was just played by Hikaru Nakamura against Nihail Sarin in the Speed Chess Championship, which is currently happening right now. I just wanted to record this while it was fresh in my mind. But in this position, Hikaru decided to run his king to the corner, which is kind of ridiculous, but we're going to talk about why he decided to do that and how we led up to this position. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire game. It was a 100-move game, but I am going to go back to the key moment where everything started to get pretty wild, and we're going to talk about exactly what happened. All right, so Hikaru's playing as white, and at this moment in the game, Nihail goes knight to f5, and we get a knight trade. Now, when you first look at this position, you might think it's pretty even. There's 4 pawns, and there's 4 pawns. Both players have a queen. However, white has one significant, I would say, advantage in that there's 2 against 1 over here on the queen side. Now, why is this such a big deal? Because black has an advantage over here, 3 against 2, right? The major difference is that the kings are on this side of the board, which means even if black were to somehow push these pawns and create a passed pawn, the king would be in a perfect position to stop the pawn. However, if Hikaru is able to push his pawns and create a passed pawn on this side of the board, black's king is way far away. There's no way black's king's going to have time to march all the way over there before the pawn becomes a queen. So because of that, Hikaru can use his queen to escort the pawn and win the game. However, Nihail is going to be trying to put Hikaru's king in check and constantly keep putting him in check if the queen ever leaves. So that's kind of the situation that we have. Now watch what happens. He pushes the pawn, the queen comes down with check. Queen comes back, trying to keep an eye on different options that potentially put the king into check and keep, attacking some of these pawns. Hikaru plays f3. He's trying to create like a safe place for his king. Keep in mind, Nihail has 2 seconds on the clock. You can see that, 2.2 seconds. So he has to basically move instantly. They do have 1 second increment for each move, okay? So the game is going to last quite a while because of that increment. So he goes for the check. And now he's trying to set up this sort of perpetual check idea. So you can imagine that if, let's just say, Hikaru decides to get greedy and take the pawn, well, now Nihail is simply going to go check, 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 and he can go back and forth and get a repetition, which is a draw. Okay, so Hikaru can't just grab the pawn because of that idea. So Hikaru plays a5, going to create the passed pawn. Now, this was actually, even though it looks like a good idea, this was actually a huge blunder. You can see the eval bar over there, 5.6 advantage for white. Why is it saying that? So if you would like to pause, what is the idea that Hikaru missed in this position? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the idea is the simple queen to e8 check, which forces the king to come up here, and then you drop back, which forks these pieces. And you might say, well, black can just take. That's true, but what happens when black takes? This forces a queen trade. And remember what we talked about, how the king was too far away from this pawn over here? All white has to do at this point is push these pawns. And the king is not going to be able to get there in time. You simply take, and you can see how the king is just too far. You get the queen and you win. Very easy win, okay? And so that's kind of the first opportunity that Hikaru had to win the game. Now keep in mind, he's moving almost instantly, right? He's moving like right away. And so he didn't see that. Push the pawn. And again, okay, after this move, the same exact idea. Queen to e4, queen back, queen to e8, then queen to e4, and you force the queen trade, and you win the game because of your pawns. However, he plays this instead, and now it's a horse of a different color. Black's queen has the pawn kind of guarded, and now black is able to play a move which does not allow a forced queen trade anymore. So if Hikaru does the same exact thing, Nihail doesn't go to h7, he goes to g7, and there's no more queen e4 forcing the queen trade because it's not attacking the king anymore, right? And so the game gets much more complicated at this moment, okay? However, Hikaru still has the passed pawn. If he can use the queen, like if you imagine if he could transport his queen right over here and then push it without black putting him in check, he could win. However, it's very difficult to get away from a queen when all you have is a lone king. And so that's where the difficulty comes in. So let's keep going. Check, check. You're going to get a lot of checks. Nihail is just trying to keep putting the king in check and not let the pawn move forward. So we get a ton of bouncing around. And eventually, Hikaru says, you know what? I'm going to leave the king side. Okay, and it's after a while. Here, he decides, you know what? I'm not having any luck here. Let me see if I can run my king over here and maybe do something on this side of the board, okay? Now, The downside of that is he's giving up these pawns. So he has to make sure that he's able to do something with this pawn. Otherwise, he just, gave black an extra 3 pawns on this side of the board, right? So it's a risky strategy, okay? But this is what happens. Here we go. Loses all of those pawns, and he's putting all of his eggs in this basket right here, that this pawn can become a queen. So queen to b5, and we kind of have the same idea. He has to get out of the checks. If he gets out of the checks, he's able to push this and get another queen. If not, black's going to keep checking him. So here we go. Check, 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 check. And it really looks like the game is going to be a draw right around here. And then Hikaru gets the idea. And notice what he does with his king. He starts going this way. Now, this at first glance seems probably, why would he do this? Why would he run closer to black's pieces? The reason is because these pawns are actually blocking the queen from putting the king in check in any of these files. And also this diagonal, right? There's more shields for his king from black's own pawns. And so he decides that, you know what, going to the corner is the safest place for my king. Look at this. There's no checks for the queen to put the king in check. You can't do it. That's not check, or that's not check rather. That's not check because of black's pawns. And so it's a fascinating idea, and it turns out to be the winning idea. And now how is black going to stop white from getting the queen? The answer is you can't. He tries to push his pawns. We get this kind of interesting position where it's a queen and 3 pawns against the 2 queens, but the 2 queens much too strong, and you can see how they just kind of clean up, and the game ended in a few more moves. So really nice game. You don't see that every day, but I think it's very instructive on what the ideas are going back to, let's go back, I don't know, let's say this position. When you have a queen endgame with an extra pawn that's away from the kings, you really have to think about how you can use that to your advantage. So hopefully that helps you guys understand how this endgame played out, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, take care.